Hello, everyone, and welcome to our prenatal wellness talks. Today, we will talk about preconception health, exploring how women can prepare their bodies before pregnancy. And to bring us this topic, I have the pleasure to have with me today Anna Verwaal. Anna, thank you so much for accepting our invitation and being with us.
That was nice. I always have a warm heart for what you guys put into the world, So, and I've been
Oh, thank
affiliated
you.
with Prenatal Alliance for many years now.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, your projects, to the ones who not yet know you.
Um, well, I'm a former maternal child health nurse. I think I worked for many years in Los Angeles. And during my career in maternal child health, I began to notice that I wanted to work with the subject pregnancy in a reverse order, kind of. I started with the postpartum floor, then went to labor and delivery, then I went to high risk antenatal for a while, then I did home health, maternal child health, home health. And I learned in the years that I worked in a hospital and at home, and also assisting at home births for many years in Los Angeles, or at least being present there, that we need to work before someone gets pregnant. I wanted to start working with couples before they got pregnant because in my own job, in my own field, I became very interested in the field of pre and perinatal psychology. And I started observing that during a birth, a woman or her partner very often go back to their own birth experience, which had to do with how they were born. So I started realizing that we have inside us our own little fetus, our own little embryo, our own little baby that is about to be born. And when things have happened to us during that journey of coming into existence ourselves, then that could trigger, or that could be triggered when we become pregnant or when we give birth. So I learned to help people understand how it might have had an effect on them. Excuse me. But then I realized I don't just want to help them understand how their circumstances in that most formative period has shaped their life in a way. I wanted to start working with people before they get pregnant so that we look at their fears, we can look at their imprints, we can look at their physical health, their emotional health, and say, well, let's have a look at when we work with all of this to kind of prepare the terrain for a pregnancy that is looked at in a more conscious way. Around the world, most of the people get pregnant and they go, oops, oh my God, I'm pregnant. And it could be a happy reaction to it or a not so happy reaction to the fact that someone is pregnant. But how about preparing it like a farmer prepares the soil before he plants any seeds? I started looking at we have to do the same, and what level of preparation do we require before we can give a baby an optimum start in life. So that has more become my work now, or that's where my passion is going towards now.
And why do you think that the preconception is such a opportunity in for both women and men to be properly prepared for?
Well, why is it such an opportunity? Because it offers such um, a chance to look at how you were shaped yourself. Most people walk around on this planet not even knowing that the journey from womb to world shaped their life. So our belief system, our fears, many of our imprints that we are prone to repeat. There's circumstances or situations you might find yourself always having to deal with or put up with. And then when you really explore as to why are these circumstances always coming back in your life, then very often it has to do with the way we came into being. What happened during the moment of conception? what happened around the time your mother was pregnant with you. What were the family situations like? What was her life like? Was she sick? Did she lose someone that she cared for deeply? And what are the circumstances that you as a baby already experienced before you were born? You know, it's such an incredibly important part of our lives, and most of the programs that I have seen start in the world, and they're beautiful initiatives. They start 0 to 3, you know, and I went like, hello, where's the program -9 to 3? But even that, -2 years before conception, because there's so many things we can do to optimize our health, to detox the body before, you know, we should get pregnant, you know, that would be for me in an ideal way of going about it and helping people do that.
And how can we help women to safely detox and prepare their bodies before becoming pregnant? And I think that here you're talking about women, but if we're talking,
Men,
even before it, we talk about men also, right?
we need to talk about sperm and egg quality, you know. Well, there are so many things, Susanna, that, you know, in all the different countries where I've worked and lived, there is also a different level of awareness, you know. So in the West, we are becoming more and more aware of the fact that you do not want to carry your Apple cell phone. And here, I'm not here to make any advertisement, but to put it in your pocket, you know, for men. And you see always they have their phones near their their scrotum. And you know what? Much research shows that that is really not a very good idea unless you want to use it as birth control, you know, hint, hint. But there are so many ways that we are not aware of how toxic we have become or how toxic our environment has become. You know, and what we're seeing in the world is that in 1 of 6 couples is having issues with fertility, then that's a big warning sign that should make us all kind of look and say, well, what's happening? And now the fertility industry, of course, plays into that really marvelously with their, oh, well, come to us for fertility treatments. But you know what? I think many of the couples that are going through fertility treatment also have no idea about what we now know through many years of research in pre and prenatal psychology, that a sperm and an egg do have cellular memory of the bodies they came out of. And, you know, when we start looking at what in the fertility industry all can be done these days, then I go, whoa, let's just first make sure that that is absolutely necessary. But isn't there something that we can do to help you understand an emotional cause? Why fertility is challenging, or what does it have to do with your own story of how were you conceived and how were you brought into the world? Because I see very often that a body is extremely good at listening to the feelings and the emotions that are stored deep within us, and that for some people, conceiving is a challenge because their own conception might not have been a wanted one. So the body is just going like, I'm not going to do anything like this because I don't wish on a child what I had to go through. And I've noticed in my own work with people that when we came to a core belief, or we came to an issue that we could address, that really quite a few people could go on in conceiving naturally, you know, and they didn't need to go through, you know, extensive and very expensive fertility treatments, you know, that are, for some people, and that's what I hear too, was something so far away from the soul of conceiving, or, you know, to have that, it became about numbers, and it became about clinicians, and it became about distance and not being part of the process as much. So I just really wish that we would look at that and say there's different things that we can do to help people prepare for conceiving a child, you know, and that should actually be as
in
common.
that sense, what are the role of the mothers and the fathers? What what can they do to prepare? Because we understand when there are fertility issues that it runs much deeper than what it is expected. But we are also talking about, healthy couples. Why is this preparation so important for them, and what can they do?
Well, first of all, I think that when you are together, and a healthy couple can also, of course, be invited to go into communication with each other about what is your, and I have to think, because I'm in Holland now for so long that my mind is now thinking in Dutch, and I have to look for the words in English. Usually it's the other way around, but there is a word, ontstaansgeschiedenis. I don't know how to translate it. The Dutch people will understand it, but it's the way that you came into being. What was your story like? So often when you start dating someone, or you're with someone, and you decide that, what the two of us want to go on this life and become parents, then one should really sit down and go, how did you come into this world? What is your idea about where to give birth? Now, these are just examples from my practice, because for 15 years or so, when I was living in Los Angeles, I had a practice where I helped prepare people for an optimum conception scenario. Let's call it that, And optimum doesn't mean perfect. No means can we ever be perfect, or we wouldn't be a soul here having this physical experience, because we're all here to learn things still. But what is optimum? And that's when you invite each other to go and say, what do you find out about how you came into being? What was your conception scenario like? What happened to your mom when she was pregnant? What was the role of your father? Was your father really involved or not? How does it feel for you to become a father when you haven't had a father, as an example? How does that feel? What is it that you need? Well, and then I had many women that in their heart would want to give birth at home, but they had a husband that said, oh, no way. What if the 1%? What if the question, what if? And I said, can I ask you where your what if comes from? And then when I would start asking, they would tell me about how they were born and that it was an emergency situation. And then I would go into, well, let's see why that was, or why did it become an emergency situation? And then when I had worked through those issues with the potential fathers to be, I said, you know what, but is it fair to maybe deny your child this experience, or to have the fear in the room where your wife is giving birth because she has full faith of her capacity to do this, that your fear is blocking this? Shouldn't we look at where your fear is coming from? And that is not something you want to do when someone is 8 months pregnant. That's something you want to look at before you conceive. So you have had these kind of discussions, and then you go, well, what has your birth experience? How has it showed up in your life? How does it play out in our relationship? I see that when someone has been in an incubator and has spent many months in an incubator, and you're in a relationship with someone who was an induced birth, for example, you might have some clashes there, and you don't even know that actually the upsetness you feel is from the place of your little inner child in you that is still reacting from the place of where it's been triggered when it was in an incubator for a long time, or when it was denied their own chance to come into the world because someone in a white coat decided it's going to be tomorrow morning at 7:30 and we start the IV with your mom, so that the contractions can start. So it's I think it behooves an invitation to really look at where and how did we come into being, and how did that journey shape our lives. And then I think when we would all do that, including all the staff that works in a birth unit, I don't even want to call it a labor and delivery unit. I want to call it a birthplace where a baby is going to be born. When we as staff, and I've worked, of course, in all the different areas of hospital birth, as well as home, as well as birth centers. So I've seen it birth in many cultures and in many different places and locations. I found that the staff is attending the birth or doing what they're doing based on their imprint. And it's not even part of our own story of being educated, you know. Like I worked as a pediatric nurse or neonatal, I worked in labor and delivery, antepartum, high risk, low risk, but never ever did I have any training about what is your story and how does your story play out in the work you do. Who are you trying to save? Now, I have lectures that I've given because that has been my job for the last 15 years or so. I've lectured around the world extensively about from womb to world, that journey shapes our life, you know, to hopefully infuse more awareness and consciousness about that. We really need to look at how that period has shaped our life. But then there's a story that I heard not long ago here in Holland where someone did some research about about vacuum extraction. And when I start talking about this, I do want to do that with a bit of a pause for people that might get activated just when we talk about the subjects that we talk about birth related, because the body has the wisdom of holding, and then suddenly when something gets mentioned, it could release that. So when people during this talk also feel activated, then just take your own inner child on your lap and be really warm and cuddly and careful with that little one that has had experiences that are still inside you. This is also when the little baby in us wakes up or screams at us, hello, I have an experience that hasn't been looked at yet that I would like to very much get some attention for. But back to the staff, you know, there was a woman who put a post out about vacuum extractions and asked people to come with some feedback about how they feel. We should look at that and create perhaps a different protocol or what is needed. And amazing, I started tracking all these posts that were put beneath it. And there was one from an obstetrician who said, well, it's a good tool to have in the arsenal of when you're an obstetrician. I myself was pulled out 5 times, you know, and here I am, I've become an obstetrician despite that. You know, in other words, it had no effect on me in a way. And I go, sweetheart, that's probably exactly why you became the obstetrician. You know, not only that, when I Googled and researched a bit further into his life, I saw that he had become an absolute specialist in taking care of these kind of high-risk cases and how to deal with these emergencies in the obstetrical field. So I wish that would have been part of their training, you know, for doctors and obstetricians and pediatricians and neonatologists and the nurses that work there to go, hey, what is your story? Do you know your story? Because we become very good at wanting to prevent it from someone else having to go through it. But if we could do it with a level of awareness and healing in ourselves, I think we find that the whole birth world will become more connected, you know, and we have a deeper understanding of how, even if an emergency occurs, how we then deal with the baby and a mom afterwards to facilitate a repair when a rupture has occurred during a birth experience, you know, and how to do that much sooner than sending people home and saying, okay, thank God your baby is alive, you're alive. You know, that's what I hear so often. So going back to your question about how to you know, to prepare people, I wish that there were places. And that's what I'm partly trying to set up in India now, because that's where I live now. I was asked to come and help build a sanctuary. I want to start calling it healing, optimal health sanctuaries instead of hospitals. So I also want a birth center there where preparing couples for birth starts long before they conceive, where they can come for education, for support, you know, for understanding, where they can come for healing, you know, and then we go, well, are you optimally ready physically to conceive right now? What does that take? You know, more and more research shows that the quality of the sperm is so incredibly important for the health of the pregnancy. We were always thinking it's the mother that needs to be healthy. But now the quality of the sperm determines the quality of placental growth, that determines many other things in how a woman goes through the pregnancy. So I think what a beautiful opportunity that we're being offered to show people, hey, this is a journey you need to start together. It's not the responsibility of the woman, and in many countries where I work, there's hardly anything that men are culturally invited to do. So I'm also hoping that we can change that and show them how incredible it is. And I remember when I worked in America, if I would say that the more nurturing you are towards your wife, the more intelligent your child becomes, well, men were very much, oh, really? They felt like, I can do something. I can protect, yeah, I said, when you treat her like a queen, how are you going to teach your baby in the womb how a woman is going to be treated? Then that's what she's going to expect in her life later on. And when you're the absent father, then she might very well just be repeating that by creating an absent husband, because you don't know, you're programming, except programming 1.0, and you need to look at what your programming was. But the programming that you were prone to is because of the life circumstances of your mother. And you can kind of look at that and go, I don't want this. I want a 2.0 or a 3.0 or a 4.0 version. But that requires awareness and a willingness to kind of go and also look at the pain when you discover that your pregnancy might have not been ideal, or your birth might have not been ideal, or your conception scenario isn't really so nice. And then to do that in a way that you're not the victim of your circumstances, but you're looking at it and going, no, this is what I was dealt, this is what happened. Now, how can I become the best version of myself, so that in the backpack that we're going to hang on the back of our children, there's not as much luggage as I got in my backpack, because my parents back then weren't able to do this kind of inner healing work. And I also think it's part of our generation to have been handed that as an inheritance, if you will, so that we prepare the next generation in a way that they don't need half a lifetime to figure out who they're not because of circumstances. But this is a generation of children that I think needs to come into the world and from the beginning just know, this is what I came for. And my parents have given me this absolutely beautiful landscape to land in and then to grow from,
You said that you were now working in India. Do you think that there are some cultures, as India has such a big tradition on this, that will embrace more the functional medicine that supports couples in this stage of life?
Nice question. I think that, well, I'm drawn to India because my soul is so at home there. My body doesn't really like it as much as the coldness and the cheese in Holland. But anyway, India has, the functional medicine, what we're doing now is what I call root cause medicine. So in any kind of illness, we live in a world where the doctor would prescribe something that treated the symptoms of that illness. Yeah, so let's say that you have a skin problem that is driving you crazy because it's itching and it's terrible. Then you get a cream and you get some antihistamine, some tablets or something to help you with the issue. But we haven't solved the problem. Why do you have a skin issue? What is the underlying cause of this symptoms that you show? So what fascinated me so much, and I've been already working with functional medicine for the last 11 years, with a doctor in India, is that we go back to the cause. It's called root cause medicine. So we're not looking at treating certain illnesses in a way that they're being treated now, which is even more challenging for the body to have to overcome all the treatments that we now give, without naming names that will flag us. Are we now looking at what can we do to help your immune system become a lot stronger than it is now? Or how do we help your body detoxify? And the world we live in today. Now, here's another eye-opening experience I had myself. I was in Goa at an amazing conference 2 months ago, where real experts on detoxing, heavy metal detoxing, and cancer and cardiology were all there, the functional medicine doctors. And there was one doctor speaking from Malaysia about the toxicity in the world. And, I'm sitting there in the audience and she shows this slide and I see Holland as number 16 on polluted countries. And I went, Holland? Polluted? How is that possible? And then, she explained it. She said, there's all these different ways of pollution. And one of the ones that we have in our country are those windmills. You know what? These big windmills that are everywhere, they release what they call PFAS in the air, and that lands on our crops, on our sauerkraut or whatever is growing underneath it. And we are ingesting a lot of things that we're not even aware of. So when you look at preparing for a pregnancy, then you also need to look at, is our house clean enough for a pregnancy? Do I still use a microwave? Do I still use plastic? I mean, the term forever plastics or forever chemicals is becoming more and more common nowadays. And what are the forever chemicals that are inside us? But makeup women are wearing, the makeup, the lipstick, there was another doctor who showed with some special camera how many plastic particles there were in lip gloss. If it isn't organic or biological or whatever, what we put on our skin is the biggest organ in the body, whatever you call the body. And look at all the products we put, the sprays we use, they're all hormone disruptors. So it's actually no surprise or no shock that so many couples cannot conceive, because we're really living in a very toxic world. But the toxicity is creeping in because it's consumer driven also. The food we eat has E numbers. Most people don't know what an E number is. What are we eating? If you look at, and even in the world that I am now living in India, setting up what I call an optimal health, excuse me, I didn't turn the phone on, an optimal health sanctuary, because I want it to be a sanctuary where we go to, because it shows the sacredness of working on optimal health in the body. But we cannot have plastic water bottles, because it's out. We cannot have many things that in India still are so common, So it's a challenge to look at how can we create an environment that is optimally healthy for us to live in, because that should be part of it. That should be your water quality. That should be filtering your water. That should be, as I said, the healthcare products that we put on our body. That is what we put inside our body. It is what we store our food in Tupperware and plastic. I mean, so much research is available now about how that causes hormone disruption.
Yeah, and this fertility issue has a lot of roots on it, because it has the environment, it has the diet, it has the sleep, it has the stress,
toxicity. So I think what I was hoping, and I looked at that already 10 years ago, was what I call detox tourism. We go as a tourist, you go somewhere and you're on a vacation. I'm like, no, you have to also send your liver on a break. Your kidneys deserve a vacation. Your gut needs to be cleaned. Let's have a look at whether we have parasites or not. How common is that? And we just don't know much about any of these things. So this sanctuary, what I'm helping set up, is a place where you can come and even epigenetically test yourself to see, is there any kind of illness in the future that I'm genetically prone to developing? What can I do now to prevent that from manifesting? And that is what makes me so interested in how can we research what's going on in our body and say, you know what, you're prone to having heart issues, so let's have a look at what we can do now to minimize that risk. So then when you do this kind of epigenetic profile, you can kind of look and say, oh, my exercise form is actually not the healthiest way of exercising. Now, for me, I need to do some weights. I don't have to run. And you know what? You know what a relief it is to learn that my body doesn't do well with jogging or running. It does much better with that kind of exercise, or my body does much better with colorful vegetables and not the green leafy vegetables. So this actually called precision medicine is where you really look at what supplements does my body, how do you say that? I have to find a different sentence for that. We can take a lot of supplements, but not all supplements are being absorbed by the body in the right way. So I had Maori friends for a long time that said, what are you taking? That's just expensive piss. That's how one of the Maoris would say it. And in hindsight, he was so right, because some of these supplements that I thought were so good for me actually weren't the ones that my body could digest, because there was something lacking that made it impossible for that particular supplement to do anything in my body. So I first had to correct something else so that now I'm in an improving line of health. So I really think that that is the future of medicine, is hopefully not much longer just treating symptoms, but I wanted to create a parallel road that you can walk. And when you're given some kind of diagnosis, then you can choose, well, let's have a look at what I can do to create optimal health in my body, because I am a co-creator of my own health journey. As we are the co-creator of how we became sick, I believe we are the co-creator. And I wanted to do that with doctors, because there are doctors, there are medical doctors, Unani doctors, there are Siddha doctors, all the different healing modalities, truly all of them under one roof in the place in India where I work now. We can look at what is from Ayurveda that would be good for you. But what is it that we need to do with functional medicine? Because maybe your gut is not strong enough yet right now to take anything orally. We have to administer for you the high dose vitamin C through an IV for now, until we have helped you fix your gut. And then we can look at this mode of entry of the Ayurveda medicine, for example, or the Siddha medicine, or the Unani. So it's a working together with all the doctors and under one roof that I find is the future. So whether you come for cancer, or you come for fertility issues, or you come for clearing up these symptoms that we might have from the last 5 years.
It should be for everyone. Mm-hmm.
It's for everyone. This should be the new way of looking at, how do I become optimally healthy? And not only that, we deserve it. We deserve it. We are bombarded with things that aren't good for us, which are basically sold as if we should do that. And so much now is coming out in the open that we go, oh, real butter wasn't good for you. You had to eat margarine. No, real butter is really good for you,
Yeah, I think we, as we were evolving as human beings, we had a time where we had to do whatever we could to survive. Now we are on the era of awareness, and we are changing for the era of action. Okay, now we have all this awareness. So what are the things that we can do about it? Because it's here, it's available. We have resources, and we can do this. We can, and our body is magnificent in terms of transforming trauma, trying to detox all the time. So we are, and I think it's speeding up. I think more and more people are
they're waking up to the fact that this is what resonates with them. So I think that it's only natural, how do I say that these places are being created. So this is why I also didn't want to call it a hospital, but it has the hospitality of a hotel. It has the things that we do need in a hospital when we need that. It has the sanctuary feel to it. You're not a patient, but you're our guest, so that just makes people feel like you don't even feel that sick when you know you get your treatments in the morning and you get your treatments in the evening, and in the daytime you're just a tourist in India, and we create programs that you can go and be part of. And then you come back in the evening and we go, well, this is your diet. So you don't eat anything outside. You shouldn't have, because of this diet that for your body in these circumstances right now is what you should be taking, you know. And then I have experienced it firsthand, what a completely different journey that could be, and how people do not need to, how do I say that, be reduced to feeling that someone is taking over your and telling you we're going to do this, we're going to, no, this is in combination with a doctor saying, is that possible for you to do that, because that would be the best. How are your circumstances at home to support this? And then another thing, many countries where people now go for these kind of treatments, the costs are staggering because insurance companies don't cover it. So it's out of pocket, out of pocket, out of pocket. And that's why I think India is also a very beautiful place to come to, because we can lower our cost and provide the same kind of treatments.
Yeah,
You know,
and the history of India and the history of Ayurveda and yoga is so,
amazing.
yeah, it's amazing. So it's there, it's available. There's so many
Yeah,
people who already practice and knows about it. There's
yeah,
expertise
yeah,
and
yeah,
science research about it for many, many years
yeah.
that I think Western world is just now trying to keep up
Catch
and
up, catch up with
catch up, catch
the
up.
and what we're doing is I also think that we need to include in any process of healing, like in any process of infertility. I see now that we push the fertility drugs within half a year of a baby not coming, or a year. Let's do this, but they're hugely profitable businesses, you know. And I go, my God, I always thought that if I send a couple to Hawaii and tell them, go in conversation with each other, go cry about your childhood or your conception story or whatever, and then you know what, you make love on the beach, your chances are much higher that you're going to be pregnant, you know, than when we just don't look at any of it. And of course, I don't want to say anything for people that have tried for years and haven't been able to hold a baby in their arms yet. There are sometimes situations where we need some help, but even then, we could do that with a much more soulful way of supporting couples. You
And
know,
what would be your
fertility doulas.
recommendations for what would be your recommendations for couples who want to, you know, get pregnant and want to give their baby the best possible start?
Well, I would, you know, it depends on where your listeners are listening, in which country are they listening, and what's available. You know, what might be available in the US might not be available in Uzbekistan. I don't know where your program is going to. So, first of all, find out what is it that you can do to get to optimal health, and what does that mean to you? Have you even considered that your body might not be as healthy? Are you inflamed? Are you having joint pain? What does your diet look like? Do you sometimes do a juice fast or something, for a few days? And how, so find someone in your vicinity that can support it. You know, you also want people that know about all of this, to help out. You know, you don't want to just do a water fast on your own for 20 days, you know. So you really want to know what you're doing under guidance of people that can support you in that way. But I think to start with the body, to make the body optimally healthy, and look at it as I said, a farmer that's preparing the soil. It's tilting it, it's looking at it, it's taking out the weeds, you know, using a natural fertilizer. What is a natural fertilizer? It's healthy food, you know, so that you're optimally healthy. And then you look at, how do we invite a soul into our family? How do we do that? And then you sit even there, you know, and you go, what kind of child do we want to receive? What are our hopes and wishes for our child? You know, what kind of environment do we offer? You know, and I remember one young woman I once guided, and she was giving her baby for adoption. She was 17, 18 years old, really young. And she had chosen the parents that were gonna adopt her baby based on the fact that they had an organic farm and they made organic candles and they had a water source and they had land and they would stay home and they had rabbits and little animals walking around there. And that was the environment she wanted for her child. Now imagine, so what is the environment that we would want for our children? One of the things I hear is remodeling the house when you're pregnant is something you might want to reconsider, because it's always more stressful than you think, because it will never be ready on time. But who's picking up on all the stress? It's the baby in the womb. So
Yeah.
a baby in the womb doesn't care about an outdated house where it's going to be born in. It wants a mother's arms, it wants a mother's breast, it wants a father's support and love, and that's fine. And it wants to co-sleep in the same bed. Who cares what the room looks like? So think about remodeling before you get pregnant, if you want to do that. Do you live in the house? I had another couple that impressed me so much many years ago. They say, Anna, we've saved money. We don't have a lot, but we've saved money for a midwife, and we've saved money so that my wife, Michelle, can stay home for 6 weeks minimum after she doesn't have. And actually, when we save a bit more, she won't even have to go back to work. She can be a stay-at-home mom because that's truly what she wants. That is preparing for. And when I look at how much preparation goes into one wedding day, the money spent on a dress, on the food, on the alcohol, on the gifts, on the venue, then I sometimes go and say, that is where your money went. But how about putting money aside for the arrival of a baby in your family? What are you going to need for that? What are you asking your family and say, would you be willing to support us in this way? Here's our little kitty that you can put, instead of a birthday gift, put money in our baby fund. Put money in so that we can have whatever, the safest car seat. I just mentioned something, yeah, because we're also in countries where we don't, the car seats in India are just, they're not even there. But what would you want to? Is there money that you can have some food made for you? That you can, in the postpartum period, can take the 40 days. How beautiful is that? The 40 days of laying in with the baby. And you have enough money to pay for a doula or a support person, someone cooking for you, someone who's doing the laundry so that you can be with your baby and rest. So there's so many ways, Susanna, I think, that we can prepare for the arrival of a baby in our midst. And then how does the community prepare? How does the family prepare? How beautiful it is, and maybe that's another story. How beautiful it is when the grandparents, the close family members are all saying, we're so excited to welcome our grandchild into our family. We don't mind if you're a boy or a girl. If there's a strong preference for a boy or a girl, then examine where that preference comes from. Maybe your parents had a very strong preference that you were supposed to be a boy and a girl, and how has that affected your life? So you just want to look at, how do we as a society welcome? If you just think about governments, when we spend our funding on creating the best possible circumstances to welcome a child into the world, that saves so much money down the line repairing broken people. We can put a little bit up front and saying, this is an environment where we're going to prepare the parents, we're going to support the parents. How can we do
and
that?
sometimes it feels like society forgets that artists, politicians, doctors, artists, they are all born from women. It's the environment. It's that environment that it's going to create a sense of trust, of self-esteem, of safety.
Everything.
And it
Yeah.
feels like society, at least in the West, because I don't see it in other places, but it's just forgetting how sacred and how important is that time, not only for pregnancy, but as you said, preparing for pregnancy. Thank you so much, Anna. It was such a pleasure to have you here
You're
with
most
us
welcome.
today. Such a wonderful conversation and reflections that I hope that our audience also are going to make in their own lives and their own preparations. Thank you
Yes.
so much for
You're
today.
most welcome. And everybody watching, be well.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.